Today, we're diving into one of the most frankly terrifying hazards in all of heavy industry. We're talking about what happens when you mix molten, superheated metal with plain old water. And let me tell you, the result is anything but plain.
And just so we're clear, this is not a still from a Michael Bay movie. This is real. This is the aftermath of an explosion at an aluminum plant in Missouri. This one event didn't just cause a little damage, it actually triggered the collapse of an entire billion-dollar company.
So that's the big question for today, isn't it? It just doesn't seem to make sense. How can two everyday liquids create this kind of bomb-like devastation? All right, let's get into it.
To really understand what's going on here, we have to look at the science. And it turns out we're not just talking about one kind of explosion. Oh no, there are two, and they are worlds apart in terms of danger.
So on one hand, you've got a physical reaction. That's the more common one. But on the other, you have a chemical reaction. And that is the industry's absolute worst nightmare. The difference between a dangerous splash and a full-on mushroom cloud all comes down to what's happening at the molecular level.
Okay, let's start with the physical one. This is all about physics, pure speed and pressure. Imagine hot metal. We're talking over 660 degrees Celsius, suddenly trapping water underneath it. That water doesn't just boil, it flashes into steam, almost instantly.
And here's where the power comes from. The water expands to 1,600 times its original volume. Think about that. That sudden, insane expansion is like a piston from hell, and it just launches molten metal in every direction, sometimes up to 30 meters away. It's a physics problem, yeah, but a deadly one.
Now just look at the difference here. On the left, you've got the aftermath of a physical reaction. It's a horrible, dangerous mess, no doubt. But on the right, that mushroom cloud, that's a chemical reaction. We're playing a whole different ballgame now.
The chemical reaction. This is where things get truly scary. See, aluminum is an incredibly reactive metal. It wants oxygen so badly that when it hits water at these temperatures, it literally rips the oxygen atoms right out of the H2O molecules. And when it does that, it unleashes a colossal amount of stored chemical energy.
Just to put that in perspective for you, the energy released from just 1 kilogram of aluminum reacting this way is the same as detonating 3 kilograms of TNT. This isn't a steam explosion anymore. This is a legitimate high-energy detonation that can absolutely level a building.
And believe me, this isn't just theory. The aluminum industry has a long, tragic history of learning these lessons the hardest way possible.
You know, for decades, if a plant had one of these explosions, they kept it quiet. But a string of absolute catastrophes forced a change. Let's look at a few of the events that completely changed how the entire industry thinks about safety.
Back in 1957 in Georgia, something as simple as dumping some wet scrap metal into a furnace caused an explosion so big it killed 3 workers and literally broke trees 2 kilometers away. A brutal, brutal lesson.
But the real wake-up call came in 1967. An explosion in Alabama crumbled a concrete wall and shook the ground for 10 kilometers. This one was so bad that for the first time ever, competing companies, rivals, had to come together to fund joint research. Safety couldn't be a trade secret anymore. It had to be a shared mission.
And the danger never really goes away. Fast forward to 2007. A furnace lining fails, dumping all of its contents into a pit with cooling water. The explosion that followed destroyed the building, killed 16 people, and injured 59 more. A simple equipment failure with an unimaginable human cost.
Which brings us right back to that Noranda explosion in 2015. And while thankfully fewer people were injured, the sheer power of that blast and the fallout from it was the final nail in the coffin. It led to the end of the entire company. It's a stark reminder that these explosions don't just destroy buildings, they can destroy businesses.
So if the consequences are this massive, what's actually causing all this? Well, you'd be surprised. It's almost always something small, a tiny detail that someone overlooked. This data from the Aluminum Association tells a really clear story. You look at over 40 years of incidents, and the single most dangerous part of the whole process, it's casting. That's when they're pouring the molten metal. It's the moment where the risk of that metal meeting water is at its absolute peak.
And the triggers? It's not usually some massive system failure. It's the little things. It's a hand tool that was left out in the rain. It's a drain pan with a tiny crack that's holding a little bit of moisture. Heck, even a little salt on a tool, which can pull humidity right out of the air, can be enough to set off a violent reaction.
And this right here, this picture says it all. On the left, you've got tools just left out, exposed to moisture. On the right, a simple, organized rack, inside keeping everything warm and dry. The difference between these two images can literally be the difference between a normal day at work and a complete catastrophe.
Now, the good news in all of this is that these explosions are almost 100% preventable. The industry knows how to stop them thanks to decades of hard-earned research.
And the whole approach really comes down to two main things. First, it's about people, having strict, non-negotiable rules for stuff like preheating your tools. And second, it's about technology, using engineering to put a protective barrier between that hot metal and any water.
So check this out. This is a perfect example of that tech. This drain pan is covered in a special safety coating. Studies have proven that if molten aluminum spills on this, the coating instantly releases gases that create a little cushion, preventing that violent steam explosion from ever kicking off.
And they apply this stuff to all the most high-risk areas, like this entire casting pit. By coating every single surface that could possibly see spilled metal, they are basically engineering the danger right out of the equation.
And that really leaves us with this final critical point from the research. The science is known. The solutions are out there. At the end of the day, stopping these disasters isn't a mystery anymore. It's a choice. It's a choice to make safety the priority, because when you get right down to it, the stakes are just way too high to gamble.